I'm a contemporary New Mexican regionalist painter. The concentration in figurative work. My life and work is about celebration. Even though many of my paintings are themed around New Mexico culture, it speaks to and is collected by people worldwide. Many artists paint the beauty of land, but to me, the landscape of people's faces is the most beautiful. And this is the focus of my work. I've never seen a wrinkle I didn't want to paint. I celebrate the distinctness and quirkiness of ordinary, everyday folks. My Dia de los Muertos series is a unique representation of the holiday. I tried to shine a light on the celebration by a culture and ethnicity that's being increasingly marginalized. It's also about the people behind makeup and costuming who express what the holiday meant to them, about the life they breathe into it, remembrance of their dead, and how they mitigate their grief and loss. Spectators become the spectacles, the viewers become the viewed. This is a time when makeup and costuming renders participants anonymous, blurs their identities, allowing them to celebrate with community members as equals. They share their stories. Each painting begs interpretation, suggests narratives that are common, and invite inclusivity. But that is also similar to the goal of my other works, which are not part of the series. Art has often been used to chronicle the events and feelings of historic times. I also try to honor that tradition. In all my work, I explore color and composition rather than abstraction. Using color in complex, expressionistic ways, I work large and mostly in series. Compositions run off edges because stories or scenes live past the confines of the canvas. My paintings wanted to be made, they needed to be made, and they picked me to birth them, and for this I am grateful. Say thank you for inviting me. I don't often get an opportunity to talk about my work, and so you may have to shut me up because once I get going, I have a hard time being quiet. You might find that unusual for me, but anyway. So I want to talk about my work, but I also want to make this about your work. I want you to keep an open mind about your own work and to see where some of the things that I might say would you could try out on your own work, experiment. My painting is my artwork is a little bit like when I cook. I like different recipes and stuff, and I'll make something, and my family will say, "Gee, this is really great. Can we have this again?" It's like, no, been there, done that. So when I paint, it's sometimes it's the same thing. It's like, that's great. Where can I take it? What can I do? And that's opened up a few avenues for me that we'll talk about in a little bit. I didn't start out as a Day of the Dead painter. I've never really been thrilled about Halloween, and it's not something that was part of my heritage. But I've always been interested in, wait a minute, Nicholas, how do I get this to our slides?
Arrow on the little arrows. There you
Okay, good. Yes, I'm technologically grateful to Nicholas for helping me because it's not part of my bailiwick. Anyway, I wrote this, wanted to show you kind of like where I've been or how I got to be painting these and drawing these these Day of the Dead. I started painting when I was about 13. And some of you might be old enough to remember the Foster How to Paint books, you know, how to paint clowns and characters, how to paint landscapes. Okay, a lot of us learned how to paint from that, and they had steps. Well, I happened to get the one for clowns and characters, and so I reproduced the Leon Frank's clown many times, as it turns out. But I wanted to show you this because it shows you that early on I was interested in people with white face and with silly costumes. So it's sometimes what we show up in our younger years is just a foreshadowing of what's to come. You might see that in your own self, and you might see that in your grandkids. You know, the things that they're interested in a really early age. Like for me, it was scribbling on the walls in my kitchen, and my parents had to put Marlite on the kitchen walls. That's the stuff that the white erase board is made out of, you know, and that kind of thing. And then the other thing was my grandmother used to watch me a lot. And so when my grandfather would go to work, she would let me bang on his typewriter, just like I was like maybe 3 or 4. And later in life, the reason I moved to New Mexico was for a journalist job. So you might see that in your own life, and you might see that in your own work. Anyway, this was the reason I have this photo is that I gave this to one of my friends when I was about 15 or 16 for her birthday. And we lost track of one another. And about 5 or 6 years ago, she found me on Facebook. And she sent me this photo. She's had this painting in a frame all these years, hanging in her sewing room. And so that's why I shared it, just to show you that at an early age, I had these weird visions about colorful people. So this is kind of like the how did I get here kind of thing. This is a painting I did when I went to UNM after I lost my job as a journalist because of 9/11. It was the first time I worked for a corporate paper, and I didn't know the difference between working for a corporate paper and working for a family paper, but I found out really quickly. I worked for the Albuquerque Tribune. And so I was the last hire, so I was the first fire when the ad revenue went down. But that was okay, because I had crazy bosses. And I was thrilled when I got to leave and got to go back to UNM and finish my art degree. So what UNM taught me was not technique or anything like that, because by the time I was 50, I'd been painting for quite a long time. Even though, as some of you women will have had the same experience, you have to put down your paints and raise kids, and you know, life gets in the way a little more so, you know, with men too, but not with the great extreme that it does with women. So anyway, by the time I was 50, I was painting a lot. And what UNM did was it told me how to talk about my art, and it taught me taught me printmaking, which we're going to talk about in a few minutes. And then they also encouraged me to paint larger. And up to then, I had only done about 30 by 40 size, because that's the biggest I could get shipped from the post office. So, and the other thing that it taught me was just to kind of go off on my own a little bit, to experiment. So, so that's what I did. So this painting is actually 6 feet tall. And it was part of that that era. This is just early work. This is the same one. See, this is a square. This is something that you could think about with your own work. If you do a square, it's fine. But if you turn it on the diagonal, sometimes the composition is much more dynamic. If you think about this painting just turned as a regular square, it would be a fine painting. But I think that the fact that it's on point adds some dimension to it. I have another one that started out this whole series, the first one I did, and I composed it on the point too. It's not exactly a square, but I'll show you that in a few minutes. But that's why he's in. So this was part of what I did when I was at UNM. It was part of a series. This is a small painting for me. It's about 24 by 30. No, it's about 20 by 24. And it's the only one that I did that showed her face. The rest of them, she was anonymous in it. And when I got out of UNM, that was what I wanted to do. I wanted to paint nudes. and as I soon realized, they are pretty hard to get shown. Not everybody wants one hanging over their living room sofa. And as you might know, if you go to Masterworks a lot, there's very few that ever make it into Masterworks. So I think I can count them on one hand in 10 years. So this is just the beginning. This is part of a series too that I did while I was at UNM. And there's 13 in the series, and the assignment was to go down to Live Draw and to paint finish it, beginning it and finish it all in one time, at one session. And the reason, if you look at the whole series, you wonder why I always did back nudes. Well, the reason was because I had a late class, and the auditorium was absolutely packed. Excuse me. And so the only place for me to set up, it was at Harwood, when Harwood had Live Draw, and it was in the cafeteria. Maybe some of you remember that. It was just a wonderful thing to do, but I would always wind up having to be in the back. So I got very good at drawing back sides. And there's another one of the paintings that I have that I'm offering for the raffle is one of those from the series, and of course it's a back nude. But I brought an array because I wasn't sure that everybody was completely excited about Day of the Dead, so there's a few other alternatives. Then, when I was out of UNM and I was doing freelance writing and that sort of thing, I was covering the Ledge session up in Santa Fe one year. And they had a break, and so I walked down to the plaza, and there was these people dressed in these elaborate costumes, with these beautiful headdresses, and they were playing music. And I thought it was really unusual. It was on a Wednesday. It was in the middle of the day. And I never did figure out why they were there. But it turned out they were Swiss. And so I took a bunch of pictures. And of course, I wound up painting them. And there's 3 in this series, and this is one of them, and this is called Just Whistle. But this is really what they look like. This isn't out of my head. This is the costuming and the brilliance and that. But it just goes to show you the precursor to the Day of the Dead. That's why I put it in. And this is part of that series too. This is called Peace March. And it was all the people that I photographed that day that I couldn't fit into the other 2 paintings. So there's some of them on here. That's how I work too. I paint slow, so I don't ever expect people to sit for the whole thing. In fact, I probably couldn't afford the fee for them to do that. So I take photos and I work from photos, and basically I'm a studio artist. I love the idea of plein air, but I get set up and then I have to go pee, and it's just it's like, no, I'm a studio artist. So anyway, so this is a composite of several different, probably 5 or 6. And then my dogs, I threw my dogs in there too. The peace sign at the bottom was actually their Swiss flag, and I just made it into a peace sign. But and then I have a friend who runs the World Peace. He has a Facebook site for world peace, and so I threw his little thing in there too. So this one was after I started painting. From about 2006 until 2013, I didn't paint at all. And I'd walk into my studio and I'd just start crying because I couldn't paint because I had to pay attention to paying bills and doing other work that paid the bills. So in about 2013, it was hard work. And my hard work got to the point where I didn't have to go out and market it all the time, 24 hours a day. I got a lot of referrals. So I actually had time to paint again. And one of my friends kind of snuck me in the back door about getting me to paint again. She was real sneaky. Anyway, so around 2013, I started painting again. And this is one I did around 2015, 15 or 16, right around in there. And at the time, and part of the, when I was growing up, and maybe you've experienced this also, is that people want you to do work that they like. They want you to do work that sells, you know. And so when you paint, you're thinking, well, what am I going to do that people are going to like? What am I going to do that's going to sell? Well, you know, there's more than one form of success. And, you know, you can be Thomas Kincaid if you want, or not. Or you can be Van Eyck, who only did like 36 paintings, or, you know, Van Gogh, that didn't do all that many paintings. There's different measures of success. So I did a series of watercolors. I mean, one is in watercolor, but this of water lilies. And when I was doing it, I thought it would be really interesting to do an oil painting and then do the same exact photo, or the same exact composition, that's what I'm trying to say, composition in watercolor, and to see what the difference in the media made. So that's what I did. I did a series of water lilies, and then I also did a series of sunflowers. So this one was the only one that I've ever had accepted to masterwork. I haven't entered masterwork for at least 5 years, but up until then, this was the only painting I've ever had entered, and it's 6 feet. You know, it's 6 feet by 3 feet, so it's pretty big, and it's pretty well done. You know, it's the painting on it shows more than a beginner level, so I'm happy with that. Walked into the masterwork opening. And you know how in you don't know where they've hung it. So you have to look all over for your paintings. So this one caught my eye, and it didn't occur to me right away that it was my painting. And the first thing that came to my mind was Monet. And then I realized it was my painting, and I was just flabbergasted that I had done such a derivative painting. It never occurred to me that I was doing derivative. So I was so embarrassed for myself. I wanted to take it off the wall and just take it home. I mean, that's how upsetting it was. And I have sunflowers too, and I thought, Georgia O'Keeffe. So if you are trying to make a name or get your name known, or you're trying to get your own work out there, let me give you a fact that you might not know. New Mexico has more artists per capita than any other state in the Union. Just in Santa Fe alone, with a population of about 60,000, there's 16,000 self-identified artists. 16,000, think of that. Now if you have to, that's like 1 in 4 in Santa Fe. You think about the 2.2 million people that live here, and have you ever met a Native American that doesn't do some kind of art? I mean, I lived in Gallup for 2.5 years and I didn't. Everybody does art, right? That's what we love about New Mexico. Everybody does art. So in order to rise to the top is pretty difficult, you know. And if I'm going to do work that looks like everybody else's, nobody's ever going to remember my name. They're always, when they see this, they're always going to think Monet. So right away I said, okay, I guess I'm going to have to not be concerned about selling my work or anybody liking it or it hanging over a sofa or anything. I'm just going to do what makes my little heart go pity-pat. When I crawl into bed at night and I have my painting clothes on, it's because when I get up in the morning, I'm raring to go. That's the kind of work I want to do. So of course this scared the heck out of my family because they thought I'm never going to sell anything again. Didn't really matter to me. I thought if I get stuck with paintings, at least I'll like them, you know. And I can't paint. I can paint landscapes, but I can't do them as well as you folks. And by the way, just full disclosure, I'm not real experienced with pastels. Okay, just for lack of opportunity. So that was kind of. This is another of the water lily series. It's called Transcendence, and so I put this in here so I could explain to you how I've come to this. Now, this one came out of my head, and I don't usually paint like that, and I don't usually do landscapes. But I had a dream one night, and it was just painting. And so I struggled with this for about 3 weeks, and I kept telling myself, "Oh, you can't do this. You can't do this. You can't. You know, you're not a painter of landscapes." And so finally, one Sunday morning, I woke up, and Georgia O'Keeffe was standing by my bed. And she looks at it and she goes, "It's just paint. Go do it. Just do it." And so it was like, okay. And so I've already had a little bit of a kinship with Georgia O'Keeffe, not because I paint like her, not because I want to paint like her, not because we have any subject matter in common. As it turns out, we have, as I've later learned, we have some commonality in the way we were raised. But anyway, so this is called Channeling Georgia. And so she and I was, in the dream, I was sitting plein air, which goes to show you it was a dream, and in the desert, and I was painting this, and she was standing at my shoulder, and she and I were probably having an argument about where to put stuff. But anyway, that's that. That's the only thing I've ever really done that comes out of, with no references, okay? So that's the other reason I wanted to include it. And then this is where the Day of the Dead started. I took a bunch of photographs. Before I started painting again, I started going to the Miracle Parade in South Valley because I had been a photojournalist, and I like to take photos. In fact, my kids, when we go on vacation, I come back and we develop the film, and they'd say, "Who is this person?" You know, and I'd take pictures of cute little kids and water fountains and stuff like that. We had this whole array of vacation photos that we didn't know any of the people. It was just a nice photo. I thought, I'll paint from that someday. I probably haven't. This one is part of my Day of the Dead series. It's number 13 through 16 because there's 4 panels. And you might know Barbara and Lawrence, the fabulous artists. I run into them every year down at the parade, and I take pictures of them every year. And if you know them real well, you know that they love to dress up, and they love to do this kind of thing. And so one night when 3rd Street drawing group was still in session, we were all down there drawing together. And on break, I said to them, had been looking through all of these photos that I had, trying to figure out what I was going to do next. And I had come across 4 years of photos that I had taken of them. And so I said to them, you know, I'm just trying to decide which one I'm going to do, because I always told them I was going to put them in a painting. And I said, I can't decide. Maybe I'll just throw them all together and, you know, we'll just do one big painting. So on the way home, long drive home, I was thinking, that's not such a bad idea. So
that's all Barbara and Lawrence?
Huh?
That's all Barbara and Lawrence?
Uh-huh.
Oh, wow.
All the models are Lawrence and Barbara in their different iterations. And so that's what I did. And then I was going to try to fit them onto one canvas. Now remember, I paint fairly large, right? I mean, large by most people's standards. But I couldn't fit them all on a 6-foot canvas. they all came out to be about this big, you know, and that's something that I want to emphasize is that people say to me, well, why didn't you paint it smaller? You know, it won't fit everywhere. Why don't you do it smaller? Well, if you do it smaller, it's a different painting. It's not the same painting. And that's what I want to say to you too. If you think about your own work, if you have a small painting, okay, that you like, let's say a landscape. You have a really nice landscape. Okay, now think of it in your mind about it being twice the size. How would that look? Okay, now make it 3 times larger. Do you see what I mean? What would happen if you had a still life and you had a wine bottle that was 5 feet tall? You know, in a painting. When I say painting, I'm including pastels and all. And all, you know, it's just a catchphrase. It's just not about watercolors and oils. It's covering everything. But think how it would be if you had a 5 foot tall wine bottle, you know, next to a floral arrangement, and it was all within the size that would fit, like in our regional shows, you know, in cantata or in masterworks. The impact of that is whole different, isn't it? So, you know, think about getting out of the little stuff and increasing it. It's also, to me, it's also easier to work large than it is to work small. If you have a mistake in a small piece, it's magnified. If you have a small mistake in a big piece, you don't notice it as much. So think about switching it around, maybe putting your squares on points. Think about increasing the size of your work. Now, I know you have to frame it, but you think about the time it takes you to do a large work. The framing cost to be the 3 or 4 smaller pieces that you would do doing the larger work. You know, it's going to be a break even, and it's going to be a showstopper because of the scale. So anyway, so back to this one. So I couldn't get them on a 6 foot. So I thought, well, I'll do it on 2. I couldn't get them on 2. I only had 3 stretched and ready to go. Couldn't get them on 3. So I wound up making a whole new canvas, and I said to them, if you don't fit on 4, that's it. Or, you know, that's as much as we're doing. So they did. They fit on 4 just fine. And these are all life size. You probably noticed from the film that, you know, that they were life size. And then the crows in my work have never really been planned. They just kind of show up. It's true. I have a relationship with crows. One night I dropped my glasses. I had 3 dogs that were crazy going down from the studio to my house, and my glasses fell off on my shirt, and I didn't know it until I got back to the house because I had these 3 crazy dogs. And so I walked up the road to get my glasses, and here's a crow flying away with my red frame glasses, my reading glasses. And it's like, well, okay. So, you know, I went and got a new pair of reading glasses. So about 8 months later, I go to walk in my studio, and there's my glasses sitting by the door, and their frames are like all skewed, and there's a peck hole in it, you know, and that kind of thing. So that's my relationship with crows. So this is my favorite crow, actually, of all the crows I've done, because he looks like us at the end of a frenetic day, like, oh, got it done, you know. Yes, and that's why he's my favorite. And so anyway, this is called We Are All One. And a lot of the titling and stuff, the slides that I have of my work, I put in because of the crows. And the titling of my work sometimes is just for fun. It's just fun stuff. Because life is just too serious. It's just too short to take too serious. And so I
I thought we were all one and they're all the same model. I thought that was kind of funny. Anyway, so the crows, when they started showing up, they started getting emboldened, and they, and they just want me to put them in occasionally. Well, then finally they just decided that they all wanted their own painting. But the problem was that I had already started this woman. So this is called Messages from a Murder. So of course you have to know that more than 3 crows is called a murder. And then this one is Fly Your Freak Flag. The crow was not planned. It just wound up there too. But yes, this isn't out of my imagination. These are actual people that walk among us.
Scary.
Well, at least we can identify them easily. Yes. But no, they're very sweet people. And this one is called In the Spirit of Family. It's probably the most traditional of the Day of the Dead that I've done. And this one's called, have you seen La Lorena? So the background, I'm sure all of you know, the background for the Day of the Dead comes out of Europe in the 1400s and traveled to this continent through the people that escaped the Inquisition. And that's why a lot of the concentration is in this part of the country, because they came in through Mexico. But they carried with them that. It spread through Europe and then came here. And so if you go to, say, I don't know, let's pick a town, Springfield, Ohio, they probably don't have a huge, big Day of the Dead festival. I don't know that for sure. But the Day of the Dead festivals have spread in the last, I don't know, maybe 10 years. There's more of them. But that's why there's such a concentration here. And it has its roots deeply steeped in the Catholic Church. There's nothing satanic about it. It's a very deep Catholic tradition. And then the crows said, I want my own painting. So I was starting this abstract, and so I gave them their own painting. This is like a curtain bow to them. These are all the crows that I've used in the paintings, and it's called Cause for Peace. This was done in 2020 when COVID retired me from my hard work, and I got to paint all the time. So I got to do things other than just Day of the Dead. And I didn't bring a lot of it because some of it has some social and political commentary that I wasn't sure would be appreciated by everybody. So I left them at home. And this is one of the more recent ones I've done from that. It's called The Magic Bus. Some of you are young enough to remember the Who song, The Magic Bus. And this doesn't, huh?
I'm young enough.
Yeah, and this doesn't illustrate the song, but it played a lot when it came up on my playlist a lot when I was painting it. And this is another example of how I changed the photographs. This was actually, the man in the front that's driving was in a black limousine, sort of, in the parade. And then all the people inside there are people that I couldn't fit into another painting. I do that a lot, so just throw everybody together. And then there was this big blank spot at the very end. And I was working on it when Betty White died. And she was somebody who was near and dear to my heart. Not that I'd ever met her, just her role model. And so one day she showed up in my studio, and this is after she died. And she said, I want to be on that bus. And she seemed like such a fun person, you know. I thought, well, sure. So I kind of roughed her in a little bit, and finished working on the painting. And then I thought, yeah, she can stay. So I made her more of a permanent thing. So that's how Betty White wound up in the Magic Bus. This is the last one that I've done from the Day of the Dead. And it's called Which Side Are You On? And I did it for a show at El Paso Art Museum. And then there's printmaking. When I was at UNM, I did all the drawing classes, I did all the painting classes, I took the one mandatory 3D class, which I didn't like, and so I didn't want to do that again. I'd taken a lot of photography, and that was fun, but I had to take another media. So I thought, well, I'll take printmaking. So printmaking opened up a whole, well, it's like a rabbit hole. It's like going down rabbit holes. If you like going down rabbit holes, you might really think about printmaking. Because with the painting, you know, and I'm sure you have this experience too, you've done enough of it that when you walk into your studio, you kind of have an idea of how it's going to turn out. Or you know how to make it turn out the way that your mind says. Well, you know, printmaking isn't like that. You put down what you think you're going to do, and you put the blanket over it, and you roll the press, and you pull it back, and guess what? It's like Christmas. Every time you do it, you never know how it's going to come out. But the good news about that is that it gets you out of the little box. You know, it gets you out of, you think about, okay, I've got all this stuff, now what do I do with it? You know, it takes you in a different direction. And it's like every print that you do, even if it's off the same plate, turns out different. And so that to me, that's really interesting, because see, it goes back to the way I cook. You know, I don't make the same recipe twice. So it appeals to me, and I'm also fairly cheap, and so I don't like, when I have these prints, I don't like to waste them. I don't just wad them up and throw them away. Sometimes I do, but not very often. So it opens up venues. And so that's another thing that I was wanting to talk to you about. I know that a lot of you don't have printing presses, or you don't have, you know, etching presses at home. You can rent time on one at Remark if you want, but there's also a lot of ways to print without having a press at home. And so I have, some of them are called monotypes, and some of them are called monoprints. And the difference is, monoprints are where you make a print and you can reproduce it to some degree. A monotype isn't. A monotype, you ink up, you draw, or you paint, or whatever you want to do on your substrate, and then you print it, and it's gone. You only get one of them. So, but the good news about that is that was also used by a lot of I'm going through these quickly. These are etchings. Okay, there we go. So, the monotypes were very popular. Oh, you see, Nicholas, you can't give me there we go. Monotypes are really popular in the Impressions in the mid-1800s. Degas is really famous for them. Van Gogh did a lot of them. A lot of Mary Cassatt did prints too, but she didn't do monotypes. And so a lot of maybe you know this, but a lot of the Degas ballerinas are actually pastel that's done over a monotype. He drew it and printed it, and then he drew into it. And so that was one of the things that I wanted to mention to you. And you can print at home. There's a lot of different ways that you can do that. You can you get plastic sheets. I've got a bunch of substrates here. If you're interested, I'll get them out after and show you like on a one-to-one. A lot of the linotypes and that are famous in New Mexico, they use a burnished spoon, the back of a wooden spoon, on them to print. They don't run all of theirs off on a press, so you can do a lot of it. There's also jelly plates that you can buy and you can reuse, and they're really great if you're going to use acrylics. I don't like acrylics. I don't use them. I have the ink that I use for printing is an oil ink that cleans up with water, and it cleans up much better than acrylic. Even if you keep acrylic wet, it's just great. The other thing you can do to make a plate is you can use like milk cartons that have wax on them, the inside of milk cartons. I've got one of those with me too. I'll show you if you're interested. I'll show you later. That sort of thing. You can make them out of egg cartons or the pieces of styrofoam that you get from when you buy meat. You can make, and you can cut them. You can also do textures with paper towels or aluminum. That either squashing up the aluminum, or you can put a sheet around a piece of cardboard and etch into it. And the reason, and you're thinking, okay, that's interesting, but how would I ever use that in my work? Well, okay. Let's take a stroll up Canyon Road in Santa Fe. You know all those beautiful windows and those gates and those fences with the flowers that the tourists all take photos of? You probably have photos of those, and they make beautiful paintings. And you think, maybe when you're doing the flowers, you think, gosh, that flower would be nice if it wasn't so crowded with everybody else's flowers. There's roses and there's lilies and all kinds of honeysuckles and stuff. Anyway, you want to make just one pastel of the flower. But you don't want to have to keep repeating. Maybe you want to do a series. Maybe you want to do a rose. Maybe you want to do, a lily or whatever. But you don't want to have to keep drawing that same or painting that same background. So what do? You make a plate, you print the background, and then you do the pastel over it. And I have one here that I did. These are etching. This is an etching. And I did an etching for this, and I did it based on one of the model in the one called New Mexico Gothic. And because I was going to bring that painting. And there's also a charcoal drawing, and then I did an etching of her. And the reason I did it is so you could see the difference in how the different media and how the different sizes make the emotion different. And Letty wanted me to talk about the emotion too. I don't know how I get the emotions in my work. My guess is that I always start with the eyes. I always start with the right eye. And I work the eyes throughout the whole process. Because if you don't get the eyes right, it's never going to happen. The painting's never going to happen. The other thing I do is I don't draw a circle and then divide it for the face like you're taught at art school. Because I find that, number one, you lose the quirkiness of the individual. Because nobody is symmetrical. I mean, you can look at your neighbor, at their face, and see if they're symmetrical. There's only like 3% of the population that is symmetrical, and they're all the models that you see on Vogue magazine. They have perfect faces. They're not going to have them for long, so they got to make money on them while they can. But I draw the right eye. And then everything is in reality, related to that. And that's how my paintings work out. The other thing is, I always think about what's in these people's lives. What are they experiencing? What's going on around them that that shows in their faces? What have they had to experience, and what might be comparable to mine? So anyway, I probably have gone on longer than I should have. These paintings. This one is a Degas, and I brought it to show it because it's a landscape. But he did the background as a monotype, and then he did his pastel over it. And this is a Chagall. He didn't do pastels over it, but it looked to me like something that, yes, you could do the background. You could do a by the way, you can do a watercolor, and you can print it if you have dampened paper. If you put it down in dampened paper, and you don't necessarily need a press to do it. Also, UPO. UPO you can do watercolor on, and the water doesn't beat up like in a lot of the plastic stuff. Okay, though my work really changed when I discovered transparent plastic sheets that I could etch, because some of my drawings are fine ballpoint pen. And if you see it in a photograph, you think that it is an etching, but it's a ballpoint pen. So I can draw something in a ballpoint pen, I can put it under the plastic panel, and I can trace it with a stylus. And a lot of the work, that's how I've done it. I wanted to show you this. I don't know how I'm going to do this. Let's see. Can I stick it up here? No. Anyway, you can. This is up for grabs too, by the way, and it's a recent print that I've done some pastel work on. I have another one too, if anybody is interested in seeing more work. This is Gauguin, and he also did a lot of monotypes, and then he did pastels over some of them. So I'm just putting it out there. If you are looking for a way to change your work, maybe that's some options. When I do these charcoal drawings, and I love them, I love to work with charcoal, but it was like I'd get it done and I go, okay, it's done, so what? So the drawing was done, but the painting didn't feel like it was done. So the printmaking was sort of an extension of where I could play, where I could do these people, and I could do other things. I could put backgrounds in, I could cut them up and put them in different things like a collage, that sort of thing. So so those are the rabbit holes. And so every day when I leave the studio, I never know. When I walk in the studio, I don't know what's going to happen that day or where I'm going to go. So anyway, let's see if I have anything else. These are some of my etchings. And see, the thing about the etching is that, yeah, it takes a little time to draw. It takes some time to trace all those lines. But then you got the plate, and you can make like 25 different things out of it. Same thing. You don't have to keep reinventing the wheel. You just keep printing them, and you can try different things. You can try different backgrounds. That's the other thing about your work. You could do that picket fence or that window in Santa Fe, and put different flowers in front of it, and it would be a series. Am I making sense? Or okay. So these are some of the things that from the same plate. Some of these are called ghost images because you ink up the plate and you make the print, but then there's ink left over. Well, what do? Well, you have to get rid of it, right? I mean, you have to clean up the plate. So, okay, let's print another one. and it's called a ghost image. And sometimes I like the ghost images better than the actual print. And then, like I said, you can play with them. My daughter thought this one looked scary. That's it on those.
And is the initial image done with charcoal?
I'm sorry. Lydia,
Is there an initial, first image done with charcoal?
done with,
Charcoal like these? And then you went to a drawing? How did the drawing evolve?
okay, well, some of them are from a live model. All of them are from my personal photos that I've taken of people. And as I explained, can you all hear me if I'm not?
Yeah.
Okay. They're from my photos, and as I explained, it takes me a while to draw any of them, and especially the painting. So I don't expect people to sit through it or be available for me. So then I just, when I'm gonna etch, I use a piece of paper that is the size of my etching plate. Okay, and then I just draw it until I think it's done, and then I put it under the plate, and then I have a stylus. And that's the thing too, you don't have to buy a stylus. You can use ice picks, you can use needles, beading needles, long beading needles, or bookmaking needles are particularly good for that sort of thing. You can use wood carving tools too if you have a thick enough matrix. The thing about the transparent plates that I use is that you can't get deep because they're thin, and they're lined. And the thing about the deep ones is that it doesn't pick up the small edges, the really fine lines as well. And I have a lot of prints with me that I'm not going to check out, but if you're interested in looking at them to see the difference, then I'm happy to share them with you. But it's hard to tell on this light, but this is one, it's the etching I did of the woman who's in the one called New Mexico Gothic. And it's a takeoff on Grant Wood's painting. And not long after I did it, I got an email from a Harvard professor, and he said, "Oh, I wish I'd seen your painting before I sent my book to the publisher," because he did a whole compilation of work that has been created based on the Grant Wood painting. Apparently, it's almost as what's the word I'm looking for? Used, just like the Mona Lisa.
Yes.
It's probably the most changed painting of American artists.
It would be reinvented.
Pardon?
It would be reinvented.
Yeah, there's a word, until I was here, I could think of the word. And, I would call you up at 3 o'clock in the morning when I remember.
I think it's appropriation.
Pardon?
Appropriation.
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 No, it's not that's not the word I'm looking for. That's the other thing too about cultural appropriation. I sometimes get criticized because I'm not Hispanic and I'm doing Hispanic things. And so my thought about that is, number one, if I have an issue, okay, let's just say immigration, okay, or the border, okay, because that's an issue for Hispanics, at least in our area, okay, more so than other places. So say I have an issue about that, and I'm really upset about it, and I want to get my word. I'm entitled to free speech, right? I'm entitled to do what I want. And so, but they say, well, it's cultural appropriation. Well, to me, the problem is if you have an issue that you're trying to get wider spread popularity for, or more support for, then if you're always keeping it in this group, you're preaching to the choir. If you think about it like a grade school wants to improve their school grounds. They want to put in a track or this kind of thing, basketball courts, maybe a tennis court, I don't know. But not everybody that lives in that, they have to float a bond. You have to pay for a bond you have to vote for a bond. Well, not everybody has kids in school. So you have to get the people that are going to vote to be on your side if they don't have kids in school. So what is it going to do for me? Well, it's going to give me a place to walk my dogs, blah, 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 that kind of thing. Yeah. So if you keep it on the school newsletter, you're never going to hit those people, right? You're never going to hit those voters to get that bond issue for you. It's the same thing. So that's how I feel about cultural appropriation. If I was copying Native American work, like verbatim, and I was selling it, just arbitrarily selling it, yes, that's cultural appropriation to me. This is my opinion. But what I'm doing, I don't feel like it's cultural appropriation. For one thing, the parade that I went to for 7 years and took pictures from ended in 2018. Now, 2 years ago, they put it in another place, but it's not a public land, and they ended it before COVID. So, in my opinion, I think that part of the reason was it was getting really big, and there were a lot of immigrant raids going on, and I think they were afraid of having a raid during, the parade, so they just ended it. So, my way of thinking is that these people, most all of these people that I met, that's where I met them. So I feel like I have actually sort of documented the parade that isn't anymore. Something that we used to have that we don't have anymore. So I don't know, that's probably just useful for me to think that way. But that's how I think about it. I don't think of this as cultural appropriation. But anybody have questions?
There was a question from the Zoom when you were talking about these sheets you draw on. They were asking what kind of sheets. I'm assuming that means the material they're inquiring.
You mean the plates?
Yeah.
Okay.
Their question just read, what kind of sheets?
Okay, let me get them out.
He says it was transparent sheets.
This is something you could do a monotype on. This kind of, it cleans up really well. You can use it more than once.
What is it?
This is something called Sintra. It's like, think of the name Sinatra without the middle A, Sintra. And you can carve it pretty deeply. In fact, it's better for it's not really good for doing fine things. It's better for I didn't sleep last night, so I'm having a hard time with a couple of words. Here's the milk carton. But this is the kind of thing. You can use wood blocks too. I bought a whole bunch of these at Michael's in the children's section. And you can draw on this, but it's actually better for making stencils.
Is that foam?
It is. It's foam. Yeah, it's foam. They come in different colors.
But
So you cut it then for stencils, like a
Yeah.
razor blade?
when I bought it with the idea of making plates, but it's too flimsy to do heavy cuts in, and it doesn't take the line really well, because it doesn't have any integrity. But it's great. Like I have, I'm working on some different series, and one of them is hands, and so you put your hand and trace it, and they're great. I mean, if you're going to do a stencil, great. They work just really well. What else do I have in my bag of tricks here? The thing about the printmaking too, and you can, and I'm not just talking about using a press. I'm talking about using a jelly print, or anything that you want to use it on. It would really work really good at cutting boards. If you go to estate sales and they have these cutting boards, they work really well for mono printing. And then you just, run your hand over it really hard. But you can use different kinds of paper. And so a lot of my exploring is with different paper, different wet or dry, what works wet or dry. You don't want to get drawing paper wet. Some of these you can tell are wet.
Can you hold that up, please?
Huh?
Please hold that up.
Okay, well this is a ghost image, but it's on handmade paper. I like that it's a ghost image of one of these, and then you can print with different colors. See, that's the thing. I mean, it's the same image, and then this is one that I brought my mistakes too. So this has some pastel on it, but I printed over the pastel too. So this is another ghost image. Here's the photo you were asking about. Here's the photo of that woman that I used, and this is the drawing that I did.
I'm using it.
And this is the plate. So it was like this,
Okay.
and then I drew it from this, and then all of it. I got probably 25 prints off of this thing. If you use these transparent ones, you have to be careful to make sure to ink the right side, because it's when it's not inked, it's hard to tell. And anyway, so ask me how I know that. See, there's a whole bunch of these different face, same face, same plate, different treatment. I
So
also do bookmaking, so some of these will wind up in books.
you're re-inking, you're putting more ink on the place,
Uh-huh.
and then making, how many
Yeah.
did you get out?
Like these with color, I took one of the plates and I did a monotype, and I printed it off the plate. And then I printed the etching on top of it. Oops, yeah, that's it. This is on Yupo.
Oh,
And I thought, ooh, that's interesting, because if I don't like it, I can wash it. So these are some of the ones that were in the, now here, this is a little different. This one here, where did it go? Before I got my press December 6th last year. It was a Christmas present from my husband. I love the man. And he's very, very supportive, obviously. Before that, I took a class at Remark. They had an advertisement for a printing class that you didn't have to have a plate, you didn't have to have a press, and it was the Sintra plate. And so, my plate is here someplace. Anyway, it's on cardboard.
so they gave us a plate, and they said, just do a drawing, and we'll do it. So I did this drawing, just a simple drawing, because I'm in a workshop, few-hour workshop. And then I put it up to a window, and I traced over in charcoal. And then I put it on the cardboard, and I drew over it again, so that it would, and then I carved the plate. And this is the first print that I did off of that one. And see?
Sandy, you can hold it to here.
Huh? Oh,
You're being
okay.
projected now.
So, and I absolutely love this print, and I even love it with the little thing up here, because I got too much water on the paper, and the weight of the press squeezed it out. And if you ever go to Remark, or you see prints that are on display, you see the perfect white margins, all the edges are absolutely straight. They're all beautiful. That isn't my work. And that's why this is called imperfection and beauty, or beauty and imperfection, because of the water up there. Most of my stuff I print. It's called a bleed. I bleed print because I'm not very good at registration, and I don't know that I find a lot of benefits from it. This is another. When I was waiting for my press, when I ordered my press, I decided I was going to make a plate. So I made this plate while I was waiting for the press, and this was the drawing that I picked. You see, from a distance, it looks like an etching, doesn't it? Yeah, but it's ballpoint. And then this was the first print that I did, and you see, I still got too much water. This is a watermark across his face. So what I did the other day is I added pastel to it, because I knew I was coming here. Just to show you, you can do this with your own. You do a much better job of adding pastels than I do. Another ghost image. You can use all kinds of paper. This is rice paper. If you use rice paper, actually it's mulberry. Mulberry you can wet. Rice paper you can't, unless you want a big wad of tissue paper. And then, see, there's just more. So it's like, okay, what does it look like on this paper? What would it look like on this paper? What if I did it in this color ink? What if I did it in that color ink? What can I add to it to finish it off, to make it look like a painting? So, anyway. You're welcome to look at any of this stuff. I couldn't see leaving it at home and then wanting to show you, so I just figured I'll just show them, I'll just bring it, and if you want to see it, you can, and if you don't, that's fine too. So, where did the woman go? Did I put her there? Someplace in here.
Now that you have a printer, do you find yourself moving away from painting?
I'm sorry?
Now that you have a printer, do you find yourself moving away from painting?
Well, the painting did slow down a little bit. Because when I was at UNM, I was so in love with printmaking, I would stay there the whole time the lab was open. And my husband, then my partner, we've only been married about 1.5 years, but we've been together for 26 years. And he said to me, someday I'll get you a press. And I never mentioned it again. It was a promise. And so last October, we woke up one morning and he said to me, I'm going to get you a press for Christmas. I was like, okay. So a few days later, we went down and we ordered it from Takish. And so there was a pent-up, I waited 17 years for the press. So there was a little bit of a pent-up desire. So yes, the painting has slowed down. But my studio's been really torn up, and I haven't been able to paint. And so now, this coming week, I'm going to have to yell at my contractors so I can paint, because it's the same kind of thing. That's the nice part about having more than one thing that you do. Because if one thing is down, or if one thing you're bored with it, or you're burned out, you have another way to go. Where did it go, Nicholas?
About the photo?
Oh, no.
It's back the photo?
Did I? Yeah. I'll find it. Yep, here she is. Okay.
There you go.
The printmaking too is also good for your brain because you draw it one way and then when you print it, it's backwards. So if you have to add anything to it, you really have to think about which side you're working on, you know. It's almost as good as crossword puzzles. I'll just put it down and let you do it.
Okay.
How about that?
That sounds good. If I can find it.
I don't know why she looked so angry. I was probably mad at my contractors when I was drawing this. So, because she was the sweetest woman.
Have you done any watercolor monotype from plexiglass?
Plexiglass doesn't work real well because the water beads.
You can use soap.
Yeah,
dishwasher.
you could, but UPO, you can use UPO, and then you can, if you don't like the watercolor, or for some reason, you can always just wash it.
You mean print off the UPO?
Huh?
Print off the UPO paper?
Yeah,
Print off of it. Use it as, oh, okay.
I did. I printed off of it and I printed onto it.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I don't like to waste anything. So,
And you etched into the cardboard to make that man? You etched into the cardboard?
no, not cardboard. The drawing, the really fine drawings. I'll just take this back to you. Maybe.
Because you said that you...
For this. By the way, some of my large work, some of my work is going to be up at O'Neill's on Central, beginning the end of the month. Think about over Halloween and almost to Thanksgiving. So there's cards here with that announcement if you're interested. There's business cards here, and then there's this drawing stuff. So I'm sorry if I've taken too much time.
No,
But do you have any questions? Do you have ideas for your own work? Is there anything you're going to take home and try? I think getting larger might be a good one.
yeah. The drawing. Now we have to have the drawing.
Yes.
Yes.